Welcome back to Season 13 of the Neuroscience Meets Social and Emotional Learning podcast, where we connect the science-based evidence behind social and emotional learning and emotional intelligence training for improved well-being, achievement, productivity, and results, using what I saw as the missing link, since we weren't taught this when we were growing up in school: the application of practical neuroscience. I'm Andrea Samadi, an author and an educator with a passion for learning, and launched this podcast 7 years ago now with the goal of bringing all the leading experts together in one place to help us to apply this research in our daily lives. For today's episode number 358, we meet with a pioneering psychologist and author of the book published just last November called Reality Shattering Insights. And it's the first in a 4-book series entitled Volt, The Vortex of Living Truth. Today's guest, Craig Polsfuss, a licensed psychologist and former clinical social worker who pioneered the 3 principles movement in the 1980s after a powerful awakening. With nearly 5 decades of experience, he integrates psychology, spirituality, and brain science to help people to achieve mental well-being, top performance, and spiritual insight. The reality-shattering insights that he shares inside his book will open your eyes if you're looking for answers to questions you might not even have known you were asking yourself. Now, before we meet Craig Polsfuss and begin our journey of self-discovery, a discovery that will take us from our head to our heart and from our heart into the depths of our soul. Now, I've got to say that this episode is not like any I've done before, as Craig covered questions that I've had for a very long time. Questions that came up when I first started studying Wallace D. Wattles and the Science of Getting Rich book 25 years ago that we covered on episode 315 with a 7-part series. And this book was one of the seminars that I sold in the late 1990s when I worked with speaker Bob Proctor. I always wondered, what is that thinking stuff that Wattles describes in his syllabus? And if you signed up for this seminar, you would have been given this syllabus to take home with you laminated. And I've got at least 10 of them still today in my office. And back then, I had no idea what Wattles was describing. This stuff, he says, that permeates, penetrates, and fills the inner spaces of the universe. And that a thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. I always thought it was some sort of intelligence, but it wasn't until this past January, while studying this book series with Paul Martinelli, who also sold this seminar and presented it years ago, I learned Paul's point of view that Wattles is saying this thinking stuff is God. And he goes on to say that we might all have our own interpretation of what we call this. Some might call it God, and others a higher power, and others something entirely different. But I think we can all agree that there's something much bigger than us in the world, something that keeps us connected to others and can help us. Now, I had to look to see what scientist Dr. Andrew Huberman would say on this topic, and he goes on the record to say that he is in absolute awe of biology, that he believes in God, and he elaborates by saying that if you look at the magnificence of biology and the magnificence of nature, he says, it's impossible for him to conceive that it could come about any other way. So coming back to this episode, if you have ever wondered like me about this topic, I'm not trying to sell you on what I believe, but just asking you to keep an open mind as you listen. This episode is about learning how to listen to the whispers of your deep knowing. It's about how exactly to pay attention to what comes up when you listen to your breath. And we'll cover how to drop from your mind and move more into your heart. And then just listen. And this is where our next guest, author Craig Polsfuss explains is how you'll uncover your true answer. So just keep an open mind and you'll see the beauty that exists when we can open our hearts to reality shattering insights. Let's meet Craig Polsfuss and begin our journey of self-discovery, a discovery that will take our head to our heart and from our heart into the depths of our soul. Welcome, Craig. It's so wonderful to meet you today. We've got Minnesota mixing up with Arizona today. Welcome to the show.
Oh, it's just the best thing to start my day with right now.
Oh, that's awesome. What's the weather like in Minnesota today?
Well, normally it's quite cold this time of year, and March is usually the big blizzard month, but we don't have a lot of snow this year. And my wife just told me it might hit 60 today. So it's going to be in the 50s at least. And that's like, oh my gosh, springtime here.
Love it. Love it. And anything over 80 for me is the ideal weather. I grew up in Toronto, so very similar. I remember those blizzards in March, but welcome. It's wonderful to have you and to have come across your work. This is right where I am in my personal studies, and so, I'm excited to dive into your work today.
Oh, yes, our chatting just before we started recording just really um, felt fantastic. And I'm sure it'll shine through and come alive even more in our conversation here.
Well, for sure. So let's just start right off the bat, and so I've got to say, when I came across your work, because I get a lot of people that want to go on a podcast, and I'm very specific as to what I'm looking for, because time is so limited. But I almost jumped out of my chair when I saw your work, and those who know me well know that I've got this spiritual side. And we all look at the world through different lenses, but can you share where your journey of the mind, of bridging psychology, spirituality, and brain science, where did it all begin to where you are today?
Well, reflecting on that, 'cause I almost always get that question somewhere at the beginning of these podcasts that I've started to do. Um, there wasn't one particular moment. I realized as a child, I was just naturally always interested in life and people and the experience. I wouldn't have described it this way then, of the experience of being a human being. What does it mean? What is it for? How do you fulfill it? How does it work individually and in relationships and then in society? But that was in me. I was that kid who on the elementary playground, a couple of boys might or a bully might go try to start a fight, and I'd be that kid that would go over and try to talk them out of it. And almost always I was successful. So maybe that was the seed of being a psychologist, or whatever you want to call it, a change maker, a positive change maker. So as I lived my life, and I grew up in in family that was Christian, and so I went to Sunday school. I have a very strong Christian background and very much relate to it. And some of my clients, and in fact, after my 4 book series that we'll probably talk a little bit about here, one of the first books I intend to write after that would be the applications of all this to Christianity, or to that, or very specifically to spirituality. Um, so I grew up in that, and one thing led to another. Of course, I got interested in psychology and sociology, so I majored in those two in college. And then I went on to 2 advanced degrees, one in clinical social work, which is more the application of things with people, and then psychology. I knew it was applied in therapy, but I thought of it, and it was kind of presented in college as more research and kind of academic. And then but I ended up becoming a psychologist and a clinical social worker, and then decades later I didn't need 2 licenses, so I stuck with psychology. I've studied these two. I had a majors in both of those. I went on to advanced degrees in both of those. I'm starting to function as a young professional licensed psychologist and clinical social worker in my mid 20s. And I was more and more consciously pursuing my own inner thirst, like you're kind of expressing to me for you. And I felt sometimes like it was a curse, it was a flaw, because it was just compelling to me and pretty present most days. But then I'd go off and I'd go into my life, and I got good grades. I was an athlete. I married a wonderful woman very young. I was 21, she was 19. And so we moved through that. But there was this thirst that just couldn't seem to be quenched very long, if at all. And I thought, what's wrong with me? My life on the outside is, very nice, if not wonderful. But that thirst was actually my best friend. And this will be addressed in a number of the questions I anticipate you may ask me today. That led me, while I'm doing all my academic and professional advancement, to my own personal awakening at age 28, where people say, well, you've written this book called Reality Shattering Insights. How do you know? And I cannot not tell people, well, it happened to me. And it wasn't just, and along the way, we get insights that shatter our reality and make it better. And maybe at first it's taking to us. It's like, oh, life is not what I thought, or my religion is not what I thought, or these people are not who I thought they were. But ultimately, it's more truth, it's more clarity, it's more freedom, it's more power. And of course, let's tie it back to this. There's a brain correlate to all that, right? It's not only psychological, and it's not only spiritual. And I talk a lot, I use the term psychospiritual in my work, but it's physiological, and especially involving the brain. So I had an awakening, and in an instant, my complete view and experience of life changed. And sometimes, well, ever since then, sometimes I'll describe it as I turned inside out and my reality turned inside out. And that changed, of course, how I understood and experienced myself and life and my work with people. And I began to work very differently from what I was trained, which was still kind of Freudian. Take them in their past, their painful past, have them relive it, to work it out, have them analyze it and come up with better strategies. There's a tiny bit of, now I see there's a tiny bit of value in that. I don't totally put that down, but I saw that no, that's actually backwards. And if we had a whole session or podcast, we could just go into that alone. But so I began working differently with people with what I would call an inside out paradigm or perspective. And maybe we'll go into that more, because that's, in a way, that's profound. But I was practicing, and the sessions were very enjoyable for me and my clients, very casual, relaxed, flowing, and more psychoeducational or psychospiritual educational, like just saying, hey, I've understood some stuff that have made a big difference in my life. Let me share it with you, and you see if it makes a difference for you. And as they would listen and consider it and we'd discuss it, their lives would spontaneously change. It wouldn't just be like, okay, I see, I finally need to sit down and meditate, or I need to become a vegetarian. Maybe they saw that, but it happened kind of naturally and organically. So I'm almost done with this introduction here. So I'm out there, age 28, I've changed, I'm working this way with people, and it's amazing. And I'm thinking, I'm the only psychologist on this planet that I know of doing this. And I thought, should I even stay in the field? Because I thought, the people who licensed me and the people in graduate school who taught me and trained me, likely would not understand and would say I was a quack because you're promoting denial. You're not taking people into their issues and making them confront their issues and work them out. And I now, in response to that, would say they're making their issues up in their mind and they don't realize it. And because they're making it up in their mind, they're feeling it. And because they're feeling it, they innocently think, well, it must be real. I feel it and I feel it every day. But when you start to see that what you're feeling and experiencing is not you're connected to your circumstances in your past, but it's connected directly to the state of mind you're in and the thoughts you're producing in the moment, you realize I'm not a victim, I'm a creator. And I want to create from wisdom and clarity and love, and I want to create the best life possible. And so I start going in that direction. So, as I mentioned before we started recording, you wake up to you're not just a little drop of intelligence in this ocean of existence, but the whole ocean is intelligent, and it's your intelligence on a level you weren't awake to. So now you wake up and you see it's all one and it's on your side, and you start learning to live in that more and more and more. And there are a few people who dramatically, and I maybe today I'll give you an example of one that had profound influence on me, where that awakening can and that merging with that can happen in a whole life profound way, where it was whole life and profound for me, but the growth, it's not like, oh, the growth stopped at age 28. I arrived at something that was undeniable, and then I could continue to grow from there and help from there. So I ended up synchronistically connecting with a new understanding in the field of psychology that was just emerging from an awakening a welder had, not a psychologist. And when I heard it, it was like, oh my gosh, I can stay in the field. And I'm going to have some peers that will have some understanding together. So I became probably one of the first 25 psychologists to become aware of what's become known as the three principles understanding. It's spread all over the world. The welder has passed away, and there's a lot I could say about him. Um, uh, and yet it's not in the mainstream yet, which is interesting. So it's my pleasure to not only be able to talk about that and maybe people connect to that, then beyond that, to if they feel an interest or even a thirst, as I put it, to what can help them have the kind of awakening. And they don't even have to look at me and go, like you had, Craig. No, and I don't even ask people to believe I had an awakening. Not about that. It's not about me. It's about, do you feel an attraction, whatever that may mean for you? And do you feel an interest? Well, if you do, and if you feel it from a place in your heart or soul or whatever word you put on that, um, it's that is an indicator it's organic in you. You're made for it. That's your thirst, your need, just like you had a thirst to learn how to get your body up crawling and walking when you were a baby, and had no formal thinking to figure that out and do that. You just instinctively did that. Well, it's the same with this. So we're all made for it, and once we find it, it's absolutely our love and joy to share it when and where we can. So I got to be a part of helping bringing this into the whole field of psychology. And then now up till now, then a couple of years ago, I decided it's finally time for me to kind of start moving away from more of the clinical coaching and all that kind of stuff and bring it out to the world as much as possible in the form of a book I've written, a book series actually, and these podcasts. And then I'm sure there'll be some online events that will evolve out of this.
I love it. This is so exciting, and I've got to go next and take this and still like step back a bit. I don't want to go too fast with this because let's just take your book, Reality Shattering Insights, and I took a passage from it, and I just want to ask you about that passage before we go on to what are reality shattering insights. But you say such powerful transformations started in consciousness and express themselves in mental, emotional, and physiological dimensions. Like this book, you say, focuses on where it all starts in the mind and soul of a human being. And that's where we started talking in the very beginning before we pressed record. I feel like there's such a thirst for us to understand our own mind and soul, and that's been missing, right? And so you're saying reality shattering insights. To me, right off the bat, I could spend a week on that passage. Tell me a
I
bit
love
more.
that you're so aware of your thirst. You're so authentically open and there with it. And as I think you mentioned before we started recording, many, if not most of your listeners are probably aware of that and resonating with that. And it's so, I know part of my doing what I'm doing is a response to call it, when you go inside out and live from that original heart inside, is maybe a way to say it. That's in all of us. You could call that the heart of humanity. So I'm loving me talking to you. I'm loving me doing this work. Oh, what a win-win. You know, and then when I need to stop and rest, I'm loving me doing that. I'm not being cruel to people because I said no to them. It's uh, and it starts in consciousness. Let's take that. So when I work with people, I'm aware they know this. They know everything I could ever teach them, and they have this thirst in them. But what they may not know is that they know that.
Right? Because we don't
They're
talk
not,
about this.
they're not conscious of it. So what you're doing that's so beautiful is you're conscious of it and you're being true to yourself as best you can. And you're putting it out there in your life in many ways, including this podcast. And that's resonating with certain people. Certain people get a clip of your work and go, nah, but certain ones go, and they tune into it, right? So, see, it starts in consciousness, in awareness, not, well, see, a lot of religions, like the one I was brought up in, which was beautiful and sincere, but it's like just believe. And this is agreeing, but not settling. It's saying, question, why believe? So you can know. And I don't mean just figure it out in your head and be able to explain it, not that kind of knowing. You can know it experientially and live in it and let it, like there's a, call it the universal mind, the universal creator, the formless source of all, put is simultaneously putting everything in form and giving it life right now. It's imbuing it with its intelligence, with its divine way of creating and thinking, so to speak. And then to think of ourselves as separate from that, and that I have to live in fear and suffer, is self created. And the only reason that happens is we have the same free will that universal intelligence has. It gave itself, we're an expression of it located in time and space in a body and matter in a body. So we have to learn that we have this free will and that however we use it is what we create and give back to ourselves first and foremost. And it's not a belief system. It's a, like right now, as I'm saying this, you're nodding. It's resonating. It's like, what is that in you? Just listening and discussing this, you're becoming more conscious of something maybe indefinable. And maybe it should always be indefinable inside of you, but it's saying, yes, come here, come here. It's drawing you. And the more you consider it, you feel it more and more. There's this, isn't it true in human beings? You can't unsee what you've seen. You may forget it, you may wander from it, but it sticks and it sticks and it gets there more and more, and it keeps evolving us. So that undefined something that we long for and feel, and every now and then have a conversation like this or come across a book or some source of encouragement and greater revelation of it, it's like, oh, cool. And then you begin my second book. Okay, so my first book is called Reality Shattering Insights, Begin Life's Journey. And then it says explore the human capability to completely transform in an instant. And in that book, by the way, I don't just describe that and give examples, but I tell at the beginning, I say, I'm going to try to facilitate this in you as a reader just in this book. And the feedback I'm getting is, oh my God, for a lot of people, big changes happen. But the second book, so it's the first in a 4-book series. The second book is called Your Universal Powers, Life Backs You Up. Imagine really knowing that. How relieved would we be? How profoundly would we relax and just go, I can breathe and look at life like a child, brand new. Like, we wouldn't lose everything we gained up to that point. That's part of the fear. We're afraid if we go into this vast something that we'll lose who we really are and our ability to think and everything and what we've gained. We don't lose it. It just gets clear. We transcend it. And yet we're able to include it still. And then, of course, drop out of the things we no longer need. Like, I may need to get down and crawl on rare occasions in my life, but I can kind of forget about crawling right now and move on with walking, right?
Mhm.
So what was I? Oh, it starts in consciousness.
Right.
So just our conversation right here and the quality of it and the quality of the listening I can feel in you and I feel extended to your listeners, that's the doorway where where we use our ability to choose, our free will, who put our attention somewhere, and where we put it becomes our experience. We put it into, I'm going to learn this topic. I get books, I get whatever, that goes into my mind, and I'm thinking and feeling that and extracting the value of it. If I put it into, I want a new job, a better relationship, whatever. And the more we understand this dynamic, we can. One of my greatest teacher says we all have an Aladdin's lamp and we don't realize it. It's like, oh, there's this source, and it's us. It's inside of us, but it's us beyond how we know ourselves. And people, I'm just really appreciating right now how I know there's people who are going to be listening to this in your audience who are, whether it's clicking in their head or not, that's interesting, but if they're feeling this, it's going to just help them. Even if they're puzzled in their head, it'll help them move more towards that in themselves, which then opens up and expresses itself on the outside.
Yeah. So it starts in the consciousness. We feel it, we internalize it in our mind, we feel it in our soul. And then can you explain what happens next with what we can create when we can tap in? What is a reality shattering insight exactly?
So there's a point in the book where I admit using the term reality shattering was maybe a bit extreme and used to get attention, because it is and can be that way, but it doesn't have to be. It can be like waves of awakening and dissolving my old reality. Oh, maybe I'm not a product of my childhood. but I've felt like that. Yeah, that's memory now. It doesn't still exist, does it? Oh, so I'm bringing to life memories and feeling them. And then I'm convincing myself that it's real. But now I can't unsee the degree to which I saw that and I feel free. Like, whoa, I don't, I'm not a victim defined by my past experience or my present experience. Who am I? What am I? Who is it stream looking through my eyes, feeling through my body, thinking through my mind? That's me. That's us. And we have our current version right now. And it's in a good mood or a bad mood, or it's smart or not so smart in certain areas or topics or whatever. But okay, that's human. So what was your question? Did I?
So yep, you answered. So I wanted to know what exactly is this now that we tap
Okay.
into our mind, we feel it in our soul and we start looking for more. And then you're saying, I'm just going to say what I think you're saying it is. It could just be a more opening of awareness of who we are. It's more like reality shattering insight is we're more than just a physical body. There's more to us, right? Is that accurate?
Yes. Can you make, I love that you're hitting on this. Can you make the distinction between an awareness and a thought? And people might go, well, I don't know. Well, thankfully I can now. Not I hadn't been able to. And that's because this is kind of the crux of it, the challenge. People all over the world, and then that's expressed through podcasts like this. I'm not that familiar with yours prior to this, so I'm not defining yours particularly. But of course, we want to understand and we want to move forward and we want to empower ourselves. So what do? We try to wrap our heads around it. And we get the degree to which that works and helps us, we gain. But there comes this point when, wait a minute, if it's an awareness, it's not the same as I've wrapped my head around it. I've figured it out. Is there something before my thinking? Is there something that can just give clarity and free me from my head? Well, I'd go insane then, wouldn't I? I wouldn't be able to use my mind. That's our fear. But you realize when you've gone through that portal or had that awakening, however you wanted to describe that, oh my gosh, I still have my ability to think, I still have my free will, but now I've got this awareness, this vast, living, feeling, experienceable reality backing me up. So now it's like, oh, I want to live less and less and less in my head. Now, if you're some people, I know there's a point in which I would have thought that's crazy. What are you talking about? But feel it if you can. If you can step aside from whatever you're thinking at the moment, or that this is like, that's your head, understandably trying to figure it out and be the boss. There are certain things it can't figure out and be the boss of because it is itself a byproduct. We were born in this intelligence, and it wasn't until years down the road that we realized and were taught well, you have this ability to think and decide and form beliefs and form ideas. And here, let's cultivate it and use it. And that's all good. It's a gift. Use it as best you can, but don't think that's you and don't think that's the revealer of what reality is. It's been alive in you always already. So oh, I want to live less and less. Here's a Christian correlate to that. There's a saying in Christianity that says, as I decrease, God, you increase. The less you have to think, no, that does not mean you're in a coma. That means you're in flow. Sure, I still have to think, but it feels like I don't have to do it. It just flows. Like I feel like I'm in that right now. Like you and I are in that flow, and we're just going where it's taking us. And there's a nice feeling to that, and it's drawing us deeper, nicer, deeper, at least on my end, and looks like on yours too. And it's like, oh, this is nice. Let's see how far we can go with this. Let's see what occurs next versus I got to figure this out, give me the formula, and we can still address what's the formula because we can talk about it. But whatever I say and whatever formula I give, that's not it, right? It can only, um, uh, this welder, his name was Sidney Banks, he would say, he would all often, when he would speak, he would say, don't listen to me. And he would explain why, that he can't put what he's understanding and knowing into words, that they're just echoes of the truth. Um, I shared this on another podcast. I have a little 6-year-old grandson living right next to me, next door to me, and he came in a couple months ago, and because he likes to talk to me about God for some reason.
Oh.
And he comes in, he says to Grandpa, I want to talk to you. And he goes, and he asked me this question, and I don't even remember what it was. But and when I was responding to him, and then he stopped me, and this is a 6-year-old. He stopped me and goes, "Wait, Grandpa, I have a deeper question." And I thought, deeper? And sure enough, it was a deeper one. And I thought, how can I answer this? On the one hand, he's a little 6-year-old boy with a 6-year-old mind. On the other hand, he's an infinite, unlimited presence of whatever you want to call that. Call it God, call it divinity, the universe, what? And what came to me was I said, well, do you want me to explain this? Um, he was asking for an explanation. I said, I'll try to explain it. There's what did I call it? I think I called it a mental answer and a real answer. I said, okay. I said, so if you want, you came to me and said, Grandpa, what's an apple? And I could describe it. Well, it's red. It's about this big, grows on trees. I could do all this description. And I'd say that's the mental answer. But if I handed you an apple and said, now take a bite of that and taste it and experience it, and maybe even over time see what it does in your body, now you know that's the real answer. Experiencing it. And too often, the intellect has been, I mean, it deserves a lot of credit, but it's not the ultimate. We need to have it in its proper place. And this awakening naturally, organically puts it in its proper place. I remember if I would have heard this, I probably would have thought, now how can I put my mind in my intellect in its proper place? And intellectually, I'd try to figure it out. And then I would try and then I would fail. But that's how we come to this. It's like, I want something and nothing seems to work. Remember when in my story, what's wrong with me? It's like, no, you know why it doesn't work? You already have it and it's already working and you don't realize it. And believing it won't be enough. Be still. Another Christian saying, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven lest you have a mind like a child. Just be open. And there's the formula. Okay. There's the formula. Feel what, stop, pay attention to yourself and what you feel, especially as deeply in you as you can. Quieting your mind will help that. Take your attention off what it's thinking and its problems and looking outside at everything and just stop and be still and feel. And you'll find in the feeling, you'll eventually find yourself beyond how you know yourself, and you'll find your answers and you'll find your peace and you'll find your love of life and you'll find the power that can overcome anything. Christians call it dominion. Well, how do I? Oh, Craig, that sounds outrageous. How do I know that? Look at reality right now. Probably a lot of people don't look. I mean, what I see right now, I didn't talk about it years ago this way. right now, out of nothing. Well, just look at the breath. In comes an inhalation, it makes us alive, conscious, and with that, we see and experience a whole world, and we get to make choices and go live a life. Turn right and turn left, and eat this and don't eat that, and there's all these experiences. Amazing. And then that breath goes out to nothing. It came from, there's nothing. And then in comes the breath. We get a whole life. It goes back and it goes back to nothing. But it's not nothing. And there will be a moment when it is our last breath. Right now, out of nothing arises a new breath. Let me put a little twist on this. What we're experiencing in this moment as you and I are talking, it didn't exist 5 minutes ago, did it? It exists right now. It was nothing. But seamlessly, silently, it's arising, and here it is now. And then it's just going out for the next. Nothing appearing as something. This is how it's always been. What are we afraid of the unknown? We're afraid of our imagination of the unknown. The unknown is a part of us in a way. It's what who we are and what we're becoming, which is ever awakening and evolving, is arising from and being given life by. What can I do of myself? Nothing. It's all a gift. It's backing me up. My very breath. I'm not breathing. None of us are breathing. Now, listen to me. We're being breathed. So it's true. Oh, I'm breathing. But isn't it more true? I'm being breathed. Now pay attention to that. I can feel that. Okay. Notice your physical breath. Now, do you notice something else? Do you notice your feeling in your heart about your physical breath? And the more you pay attention, you might notice it right away, or it might take time. You'll notice there's a part in your deep in your heart that is totally madly in love with the fact that you're alive and that you're being breathed. Another breath. Oh, oh my God. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And another breath. Because there's an intelligence that knows this is a miracle. And I'm being given it, and I go run around out in it, and that's fine. We're like little kids. And then we bump into things, then we have to back up, but we keep being reminded back, like, oh, in that silence right there. Hopefully there's I think there's a saying that says you have to lose your mind to gain it. Or well, when Sid Banks had his awakening, he's my primary example in that book of reality shattering insight. Someone said to him, he was struggling very much. He was 42 years old. He was struggling with feeling so insecure in his life for many reasons we, I could explain in his story, but I won't go into. And when he was bemoaning this to a friend of his, bemoaning how insecure he was, and his friend said to him, Sid, you know, I've known you for years. You're not insecure. You just think you are. And Sid said when he heard that, he heard his first spiritual fact, and it totally changed him. He said, I didn't just hear, Sid, you're not insecure. You just think you are. He said, I heard in a way where I saw it, Sid, everything you've ever experienced in your life, you've made up in your mind from the beginning. And it was so powerful and had so much potential in it for him to be freed from this suffering he was in, that he went through this awakening process, and boom, within 3 days and 3 nights, he had completely changed how he saw and experienced the world. And as he shared that, that led to this whole new approach in the field. When you give up your free will and your free mind and trust what is, like a teardrop, a single teardrop falling into the ocean, you realize you still have your free will and your free mind, but now you've got the ocean to back you up. Where your fear was, oh no, I'll lose who I am. You will lose who you are as a separate thought, separate from the ocean that you really are in and are. But when that separateness in Christianity, they call sin separateness, when that dissolves, guess what? You're returned back.
So let's just take it back again. So it starts in
Okay,
the
sorry.
consciousness. No, no, I'm just going to bring it back to go forward. So it starts in our consciousness. We feel it in our mind and in our soul. We have
Yes.
some sort of awareness that we're more. And you talked about feeling the breath, being happy about our daily breath. And I was thinking about when I'm on the hiking trails and I see the same people every day and I say, beautiful day, isn't it? And we say, yes, it's a great day to be alive. I never really thought about being grateful for my very breath. That, I've just been grateful at a certain level, like grateful to be here today, but grateful to be breathing. That just brings it a step deeper, right? And so then going into this book that I saw, it was called The Eureka Factor, Aha Moments, Creative Insight in the Brain. And it was by John Cunios. And we covered it on an episode on the podcast. So when we can now start to see things deeper, would you say this reality shattering insight could be aha moments like
Yes.
that could change the world? Maybe inventions could be made.
Totally, totally. There's a hierarchy or levels of reality shattering insight. It could be on the level of, um, oh, I remember where I left my keys, and
Right,
that makes your
right.
world
For
better, right?
sure.
All the way to, oh my gosh, it's now, this might sound crazy to a lot of people, but I'm going to say it. Everything I look out and see and experience is an illusion. Not that it's not real, but it's not what it appears to be. It appears to be separate out there and real, and I have to go deal with it. And when I start to wake up, it's like, it's my thought projection, my consciousness combining with the power of the intelligence of life and the ability to choose is painting this picture. I'm reaping what I'm sowing. This is amazing. And at first we might feel, oh boy, have I been stupid? Then we'll try to do positive thinking and affirmations, to make it positive. But that's just our concept of positive. What this is saying, you can just drop all that and the innate positive will show up. And you learn to get out of your way more and more and more. I want to jump backwards just a second to when you were talking about walking outside and the awareness of the breath. One of the wonderful definitions I've heard of enlightenment is when you experience every breath as grace,
Wow.
then you're enlightened.
Wow. So can we now tie in where the brain comes in? And I've been thinking about it, trying to bring it in because this is where I'm interested in bridging spirituality and the brain. Tell me where you brought the brain in here.
Okay, I'm going to say some things too that might be really sound really crazy, but it's uh, so this awakening. There are three levels of enlightenment that I won't go into at the moment, but well, maybe I will. The first is classical enlightenment, where you realize one way to say it is, oh my gosh, it's all thought, or the world is an illusion. And what's real is what's behind and within me that's making that up, and that I have a power to do something about that. So now all this suffering I've experienced can at least start to, if not go away all at once, slowly go away. The next level is, you could call it unity enlightenment, where you see the oneness of you're still a drop, but you're at one with the ocean. You're not separate. So now let's bring the brain in. So this means your physical body is that same intelligence that, if we're going to talk, see, it's before time, space, and matter, but it creates time, space, and matter. So we have a body and it operates within it. Nothing, it's existence and intelligent existence itself. So nothing can exist without that universal intelligence in it and operating it and creating it and uncreating it and recreating it in a new evolved way. So I feel like maybe I'm getting too up there, but the body, therefore, is just another form of expression of divinity, of that intelligence. So it holds information, power, and ways to access and live that power that are there for a reason that don't exist just in the mental realm or maybe the psycho-spiritual realm. So then I go into this in book 3, this part of it. And the name of that book is No Source in Your Heart. Life Originates Inside. Uh, try to, this could be weeks of training, and it was for me. But well, let me say this to preface this. We chatted a bit before we recorded about this. So, although I had learned about and was very interested in neuroscience as a psychologist, I wasn't really going down that path as a part of my search. It was happening in these other ways that I've touched on. But then there came a point where it was like life tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Here, look at this. I want to show you this." Not only did I have that synchronicity with that welder and then became a part of that, but then a few decades later, there was a synchronicity where I hooked up with someone who created a very advanced brain-based um, transformational program. And this is, and with I was involved for over a decade. And this is where I learned all the brain science and mind body side of it. So now, if necessary, for people like you, and this is what I get more into in book 3, I can articulate it. So I would say, just to give you the essence of it, so this intelligence of life is designed into our physiology, especially in our brain. And you maybe have studied, there are some people say there are 3 brains, right? The one in the head, the one in the heart, the one in the gut. I would also say within the head brain, there are 3 brains, and we could go into that. The survival brain, for simplicity, the survival brain, rational brain, higher brain. But I'm almost tempted to call the whole human body a brain right now. And even the whole physical reality is the divine brain, in a sense, is the physical correlate to the divine mind. So to try to get to that essence, there's a system known for ages in the human body, energy pathways. Chinese medicine talks about meridians, and it's tapped into that to try to help people heal various things, right? That system is, much of it is what's called piezoelectric. Have you heard of that term? Mm-hmm. Piezoelectric. And basically what that means is when you engage physically, because it's a physical body, when you physically engage that system in a particular way with a particular amount of pressure or touch or stretching in a particular timing in a very precise way, it's like almost like you'd say tuning an instrument. It releases the energy, the life energy, and so we feel like in Chinese medicine, maybe you go in for some kind of physical pain and the pain starts to release or whatever, right? Well, that has a correlate with what I'd call awakening or enlightenment. And you can engage it in a way that helps facilitate that awakening. And the wonderful thing about it is you don't have to believe in it. You can just go try it and see, well, does this work? And then see if it works, right? Well, when I had my awakening, I was introduced to a very, very powerful, I didn't know how powerful it was, right? Simple, safe, easy way to engage that. And my mind, my brain, you cannot have an experience that does not have, or a mental experience, or any experience that does not have a correlate, a neurological correlate in your brain. So that feeling of that thirst inside, and we're talking about it and we're getting whatever insights we are listening to this discussion. There are, of course, there's psychological thoughts and correlates and insights maybe being gained, but there's physiological. So you could say, and I'm sure you'd say this, and if you disagree, tell me, but oh, as we're discussing this, our brains are wiring and rewiring to integrate the truth of this, the value of it, the energy of it, and either wiring out stuff we don't need or wiring it into a place where it's still there, but oh, now my focus is shifting. My way of the way my brain is operating at the moment is serving me better.
Mhm.
So, does that speak to it? Because you're
It,
asking these fantastic questions that have university courses behind them to answer.
exactly. So there's so much to this. Really, what I like doing is, making connections. I'm making so many connections. I'm making connections to the infinite intelligence, to some books that I've read from the 1900s that talk about it. And, you know, we don't really name it in the study that I did, but I think this infinite intelligence that we're surrounded by, I'll just name it, call it whatever you want. I call it God. That connection is in the interspaces of the universe. It's everywhere around us. And I'm sure you would say that with your background, right? Like,
Yes, although I'm hesitant and try to be wise in using terms. Like when I
right.
say God, I don't know what a person's going to think,
Yeah.
and that might serve us or not serve us. Or if I say infinite intelligence, same thing. I don't know what you're going to think. It could
Yeah.
get better or worse. But I just do my best from where I'm really at and just trust.
and
Right.
and everyone will have their own interpretation of what it is, but there's
Yes.
something bigger than us that we can tap into to have these reality shattering insights that could change our world in an instant. And would you say that it would be like co-creating with others, with, right?
Well, first you're co-creating with that power.
Right?
And then yes, we're all co-creating this world and this society. Um, I want to back up just a second there because talk about reality shattering insights. I mean, I've had that change your reality. Um, I'm being feeling so grateful right now for what I'm going to say to you that I can. I mean, I've had countless people struggling with addictions where their addiction goes away. It just goes away. They don't work on it. They're not in recovery forever. It goes away. And I'll give you a little example of that will probably make sense to everybody about why it goes away. So why do people enact any kind of an addiction? They're suffering, they're feeling stress, anxiety, whatever it is, and they want to feel better. So they smoke. So they engage in whatever it is that can help the best they can do. It's totally understandable. And try to get away from the pain and into a better feeling. When you start to find access to the better, and not just better, the ultimately best feeling, that you has been deep inside of you all along and you just didn't know it. And you'd start to feel it more and more just because you glimpsed it through a conversation like this, let alone more that I'll share in my other books. You can actually facilitate it, not like we have to be in a big crazy hurry or panic, to find our peace, but the more you find it, it's just there. You can't unsee it, right? So I've literally had, I have two in mind that just popped in right now, clients, and they happen to both be women, young women, I don't, between 25, 35, maybe in that age range, who are smokers. And they showed up in my session and said, you know what, Craig? I just realized I don't smoke anymore. They said, I didn't quit. And then when we discussed it, it was like, it was obvious. The more they were understanding what I was pointing to through my work and feeling it in themselves and living in it more, they were less stressed. So they lived, and the more that went, and they felt more and more at peace and less stressed, it didn't even occur to them to smoke. And then one day this woman, the first one was that was back in the days when there were ashtrays in the waiting room. And she went by and she looked at the ashtray and she said, "Oh my God, I haven't smoked." What did she tell me? For a month, I think she said. I haven't smoked for a month and I didn't even realize it until. So does that make sense though? That, well, yeah,
Yeah, you know what? It totally I connect this and I'm thinking because your vibration changes, right? As you become
it's a good way to
you're
put it.
moving so far away from the yuckiness of the ashtray. Like when I think of those ashtrays, it's like, ah.
Yes.
And when you become more and into who you are, you're becoming on a higher vibration, farther away
Yes.
from the lower,
And higher vibration means nicer feeling
right? Right.
and more perfect feeling. It feels perfect. Just like this conversation right now, it's continuing to grow and be nicer and nicer. It was nice to start off with. And I feel like if I had to put what I'm feeling right, I could say a lot of feelings, but the essential one is, oh, this just feels so good. This just feels perfect. I just love being here in this moment, having this conversation with you. Does that mean I agree with everything you think and say, or how you dress, or how you live your life? That's all something else. But to be here fully me, open fully as I am to you and what you're doing, it just feels just right. The just right feeling.
Because we're in resonance. We're,
Yes, and then we share it together.
yeah,
Wow. And that's not just one plus one is two. One plus one is 11,
yeah,
right? It'll go out to others in our lives.
yeah. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I really want to just take this and say, well, to bring it all together, we added we got the understanding the brain in here. What about connecting this to social and emotional learning for, those in our schools that are trying to bring this, or to our kids, or how does this connect?
I've found that the more that us that we get more in touch with deep within us is innately healthy in every way. And the more we're in touch with it and live it in it, then it shows up on the outside, let's call it. Oh, my thinking is more healthy and clear. My emotional intelligence is more strong. My physical body gets healthier. Now, I don't want to say, come to me, learn this, and your cancer will be healed. But I've got examples in my personal life and in my clients where that has happened. So I don't put any limits on this, nor do I go out there boasting, and try to drum up some business for, get a lot of desperate people who want their cancer cured. Um, so social emotional. Um, I've had clients, as I said, as we get in touch with this, our mind is quieter and more present. And as it is, it's more orderly. It's more tuned into what is now, not my past traumatic memories, not my future, my worries about the future. It's right here. It's right now. It's more peaceful. And guess what? That undoes ADHD. I've had clients. There's one notable one. I think I mentioned it in my book. He was an owner of a company. I didn't even know till months into working with him that he had ADHD and was on medication for it. And he says, "You know what? I've made so much changes. I'm feeling like I should go off. I can go off my ADHD meds." And I said, "Oh, that's cool. I've had clients do that. Talk to your doctor." And I don't know if he ever did, but he went off his ADHD meds. He didn't need them anymore. Well, so does that speak to? I think we've barely scratched the surface of what the potential is for
Right.
human beings in that direction.
Yep, I agree. I think that as you release the other books, I'd like to have you back on to maybe strengthen this. I think this just is the beginning of
I'd love to,
opening the
sure.
awareness. I'd love to have you back to tie this into, now that we can tap into this, now what? To maybe create our own, like reality shattering insights at will, right? Like,
Yeah, it's we relinquish at first our attachment to our personal desires of, well, I want a healthy body and I want a nice house and I want a lot of money. And sure, sure. So if those thoughts are attractive to you and feel good, acknowledge them. Sure. It's kind of like aim for that. But now, instead of I'm going to try, and get into the worldwide paradigm of effort and work to kind of push against reality to make it produce what you want. It's like now you learn how to just open up and let it come to you. So in one way, you don't care anymore. You care all about, I just want to be in this wonderful state of awareness where things seem to be working out more and more and more for me, and it feels just right. And I'm meeting just the right people at just the right time, and I can make mistakes. And then it's like, oh, I am in flow more and I make less mistakes, but I can make mistakes and I can learn from them. No big deal. I don't have to be afraid of my mistakes.
right.
Just that keeps opening up more and more. Um, so one of my colleagues has a program, I think it's called Effortless Creation or something like that. Living Miraculously might be the name of it. And where he shares his best understanding of this. And it's that direction of like, oh, you kind of can come back to yourself, engage like you were originally when you were born, but still with everything you've gained, and let your next breath be given to you as this miraculous gift and feel it. And let the next moment of what am I going to say here, answering your questions and engaging with you. Let it come. There, flow, flow.
Craig, this has been incredible just to listen and put into words something that I've only ever felt, right? Like,
I love it.
you know what I mean? I've
Yeah.
felt this. I've known that this has been a thing, but I've never known what it was, right?
Just like for me, and I think this is obviously happening with you, and I just am so grateful that it might happen with your listeners. It's the same thing. It's like something in my heart was longing for something that I just desperately knew or believed could be true, but on the other hand, I wasn't sure. I
Right.
just wasn't sure. And then it's like life came and said, "Come here. I'm here. Yes, yes." And it's like, really? And it took me out of um, this is a whole nother discussion, but uh, my understandable belief systems that were well intentioned and given to me by my parents and my society, that I had to be willing to look outside of those because if I was honest, it was like, hey, this is all good, but it's not enough. Oh, but if I look outside of this, I'm risking being deceived or sucked into a cult or, whatever our thought would be.
Right.
Right. And it's like, well, so ultimately, when you trust yourself enough, the thought that helped me at the time was, well, wait a minute. God knows my heart. And if I'm making a mistake here, opening up to this, he'll come and protect me. He'll wake me up and go, oh, get back on track. But it wasn't. It encouraged me further and further. And I learned how to listen and respond to that more and more and more.
Got it. Well, Craig, I want to thank you for your time today. I know we could keep talking for another couple weeks here, but I want to thank you for sharing your time today, um, sharing your book, Reality Shattering Insights, and your decades of research. For people who want to connect with you, I've put your LinkedIn in the show notes, but is there any other place you want people to know about to find you?
Well, I've just embarked on this journey with my book to get this out to as many people as possible. So I'm going to be developing a better website, but right now I have one at craigpolfus.com, www.craigpolfus.com. And it's Polsfuss is how it's spelled. Um, and and people could reach me at craig@craigpolsfuss.com if they want to email me. Um, I'm happy to speak to people, and uh, I thank you so much for letting me get the message out and my book out, and then obviously I'd like opportunities to speak on other podcasts or to if people are part of groups, and now with the internet, we can have worldwide discussions. Um, yeah, it's so amazing.
Absolutely. Well, I'm grateful to have had you. And this podcast does go global. So that's the fun part about this. This is the seventh year we've been doing this podcast, and it's just been amazing with what happens when you put content out into the world that people are hungry for, that they want to learn. So I'll continue to produce episodes that really try to tap into what's current, what's new, what research says, but there's also that part of me that wants to just dive into what you've uncovered today. So I want to thank you so much for your book and for your time today.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's fantastic.
Thank you.